some of these long trains are how many feet long? How many cars long?
The ones that, if you will, that I would say began to reach the upper limits of what people are operating today with the type of equipment they're operating. I see sometimes 15, 17,000 feet.
Wow.
But that's
So
not,
if something
but
goes,
that's an exception.
yeah, but then still, your earlier testimony was that you get some other trains that are pretty close to that on a regular basis. Those are exceptionally long, but we're not talking short trains either here. The idea is to move as many cars as possible, right? I mean, that's the incentive, lower cost, right? So my concern is this. You got one person on a train at some point, and something goes wrong, and that conductor has to, that engineer has to leave the car and then go check something out at the back of the train. So they leave the car completely unmanned and walk back. I mean, you had a rule that you were considering up until May of this year. And that rule was to require 2 people to be on the train. Seems to make sense to me. You know, you've got fatigue problems, right? So not only is that one person who's going to be on the train overworked in this fatigue problems, but now you've got them leaving the car and leaving the locomotive and then walking back and trying to figure out what's wrong. Just for the safety of that single employee. It seems reckless and irresponsible to not require 2 people on the train. It's mind-boggling. I know you're trying to squeeze every single dollar out of the operators are trying to squeeze every single dollar out of these employees in every single train. But at some point, common sense and basic concern for your workers. And the FRA has a role to play here. You set the standards. You say, you come up with some basic rules. This makes sense. This makes sense to have 2 people on a train. Imagine that, you've got a long train, has tremendous impact on local communities, blocking crossings, and you've got one poor man or woman out there trying to run that whole operation. That's ridiculous.
Well, I certainly agree with what you said about common sense. That's why I think the railroad, if you will, rail labor and rail management, has lots of common sense, and they can figure out what's right and wrong, and then once they figure it out, they'll negotiate it.
So why withdraw the rule? What's the thinking?
What was the purpose? They have the Railway Labor Act, and there's no facts.
Well, you had the rule, you withdrew it. So it's not like I'm asking you to do it. This is something you were going to do, and then you changed your mind. You withdrew the rule on May 23rd, 2019. You withdraw the rule to require 2 people on a train. Why? I'm just asking you, what's the thinking? Why? I thought you had a good idea.
By withdrawing the rule, there's nothing out there to support having a rule.
What?
How do you give oversight to something if you have nothing to give oversight to?
You had a good idea. You had a rule. You proposed it.
Nothing.
So it's not a vacuum. You had a good idea. You had a proposal, and then you withdrew it, in spite of the common sense that we both agree supports that rule.
And here's the issue in respect to time. And this is what I said earlier. We can sit here all day and bring everybody up here, and we'll come up with all kinds of hypothetical examples.
No, I'm not talking about a hypothetical. I'm talking about your rule. This is your rule. You said
there was nothing to support it.
Well, why did you write it then? What do you mean there's nothing to support it?
I wasn't here.
You have fatigue workers.
I didn't write the rule.
You have huge trains. You have huge disruption in these communities where you have hundreds and hundreds of cars on these trains. And you're absolutely right. You should have 2 people on that train. You draft the rule. May 23rd comes and you withdraw it. There's plenty to support the rule. I agree with your rule. I'm just wondering I'm just wondering why you withdrew it. That's all. I take that as an I don't know either, Congressman.
No, I do know, but time doesn't allow me to share
Well,
everything with
you
you.
have plenty of time.
My door is open, my phone is on, and I'm available.
Well, we're
to you
here
at any-
now, though. We're here now. This is the hearing on this.
There's not a singular answer to the size of a train crew. Do you realize today, has anybody shared with any of you, okay, that we're operating train crews today?
Yeah,
with-
you shared,
No, with-
the FRA shared a rule with me saying there should be two people on the train. You shared that with me. I didn't dream that up. You sent it to me. And then on May 23rd, you withdrew it. And my question remains, why did you withdraw it?
Because there's no facts to support it.
Well, why did you send it to me then?
You'll have to ask my predecessor.
All right, I yield back.